Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Jeff would have liked to be here today, to know that he's still so very significant to us, and his work is so very relevant to our lives, that his passing was mentioned on TV and all the newspapers. He was always so good at having the perfect quote to be included in the papers. We all know what it's like to sit here and wonder whether our work will be significant after we no longer have our seats or we pass on. But the fact is that Jeff's work was always significant and relevant, even if he didn't always know it himself. Despite being on the outside in so many ways, his work was always some of the most relevant. He was fiercely independent. His politics represented his district and people in need of justice before himself. And he did it in a way that very clearly made him an iconoclast. He disregarded unjust authority if he felt it didn't serve democracy and justice. He stepped outside what was expected of him, filing for an impeachment against a former chief executive when both parties argued with him to not go forward with it. Openly arguing with our current chief executive against her stances on justice for incarcerated men and women and tribal sovereignty. Repeatedly filing petitions to reduce the sentences of men placed in prison despite repeated denials. He believed with a whole heart in justice and the deep humanity of mercy. He couldn't allow a system of injustice to punish men he knew as friends when he knew it to be wrong. And so he didn't slow down. Even when he was going through some of his toughest days, the chemo treatments in the mornings before coming to session, sitting beside me in this chamber, sweating and uncomfortable, dealing with the effects of the treatments, fitting in visits to the prison between trips to Boston for treatments. Not only was he resilient and hardy in a way I could only dream of, he had a depth of belief in his cause to which we can all aspire. I'm not saying Jeff is perfect, but I want to give space to Jeff's imperfections to shine through today. As they say, the cracks are how the light shines in. It is in his struggles that we can see ourselves in his work, and I doubt anyone in here who spent significant time with Jeff didn't end up in an argument with him. A political fight, a principled fight, or just disagreed on tactics, but that's how you knew you were close to him. And the next morning or day or week, you'd be back on his side, or he'd be on yours. And that was also part of Jeff. He forgave, he forgot, he moved on in a way that enabled him to not burn bridges and to build lifetime friendships. In the press, you might have heard that he was once the youngest town manager in Warren, our manager in Maine, hired at the age of 23 to run my town of Warren. He was the town manager before I was born. But when he started taking me to doors to run for the seat for the first time, he took me to home after home, where he shared stories with older men he had fished with, gone to baseball games with, or worked with in the school district. And every one of them was loyal in a way that went well beyond politics. They knew his politics and some had to be upfront with him where they didn't align. But political disagreements didn't affect their friendship. In more than one home, Jeff shared tears over stories of days gone past. And in those visits, I saw politics built on relationship that I knew I needed to emulate. Jeff's fight for justice was also built on relationship. Despite being brilliant in a way I'll never match, with a head for dates, names, places that belied his masters in history, justice was never just an intellectual pursuit for him. He fought for the men he knew. He sat down with them and demanded truth, and then demanded it again if he felt they hadn't told him the full truth. And when he felt he knew their truth, then he fought for them. He always, in so many times and places that I saw, counseled people to come clean with the truth. He didn't believe in sugarcoating, and he believed that when you have told the truth and taken responsibility, it was the job of the system and Jeff's responsibility personally to fight for justice with you. That those men, wrongly convicted or punished too severely or who have come to a reckoning with society, now deserve to have their lives back. And he would not abide by a system that could not be the equal to what those men had given of their time, their moral reckoning, and their confrontation of their deepest fears. If these men can do that, this system should be held to the same high standards, the same moral reckoning. And I, personally, don't believe in death, and I don't believe in heaven. I believe that when a person lives their life as fully as Jeff did, that their ways of connecting, of demanding truth, and advocating for something better continue to resonate within those of us privileged enough to know him. They resonate in these halls with the ringing of those bells. They resonate in our speeches well delivered and in our friendships held dear. They resonate when we fight for what is right with a little bit more pride. And they resonate when our eyes leak tears, as Jeff's did, because we are doing emotional work and we feel deeply and we want you to as well. Jeff's work keeps ringing within us. And so it is important that we've taken a moment to commemorate his passing today, to celebrate his life and work in this chamber. And it is important that we share Jeff's story and work with those who will carry it on.
Chair recognizes the representative from Bluefield, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, my friend from Warren. That was a difficult speech to follow, frankly. A few years ago, I was invited to the prison branch of the NAACP, by the NAACP prison branch, to attend an event at the Maine State Prison honoring the former Representative Jeff Evangelos. I had already met the Honorable Jeff Evangelos here in the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee, where he had come to testify about parole and the legislation that he worked so tirelessly to advance. But it was in the chapel of the prison in Warren that I believe I truly met Jeff, the real Jeff. Handed a microphone and given the freedom to speak from his heart, he did exactly that. In a voice that filled the room, he spoke of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., of the killing of President John Kennedy, about justice delayed and justice denied. And then he spoke about a dark-skinned black man who, here in Maine, right now, is sentenced to 2 life sentences for a non-homicide crime, a case in which no one was killed and in which another person had admitted to committing the violence. One of the prosecutors in that case stated at the time of the sentencing that, quote, aside from colonial times, there has never been a life sentence imposed in Maine for a non-homicide. It's a great day for justice in this country. Jeff fiercely responded that in colonial times, Maine legally permitted slavery, and perhaps that was not an era that we should look to as a benchmark for justice. That was Jeff, fearless, unflinching, deeply rooted in history, unapologetic, and his insistence that we can and must do better. In the months and years that followed, I would often run into Jeff in different places, most frequently at the prison in Warren. Many times, even if I didn't see him, I would notice his name signed into the visitor log just before mine as I went in, or just after mine as I exited. They sometimes felt as though he spent more time in the prison than he did at home or anywhere else. Inside the prison walls, every man has a story about Jeff Evangelos. He got me an attorney. He helped me file an appeal. He filed motions for me. When new security rules prohibited visitors from bringing paperwork into the prison, including attorneys, Jeff adapted. He'd sit in the lobby in his car with stacks of documents, memorizing as much as he could before stuffing them away. Then he would meet with whichever man who was there to help that day, gather whatever he could from memory, and hurry back out to write everything down before it slipped away. He did this work, unpaid, relentless, often invisible, while also undergoing chemotherapy and participating in medical trials to treat his cancer. Jeff Evangelos was saving these men and dying at the same time. A few days after his passing, I was in the prison, and I spent time with the men whose lives who made one day spending time outside of those walls because of Jeff's labor of love. I asked them if they would share some words that I could carry here into this chamber. Here are some quotes from some of them. Jeff is absolutely one of the best people I've ever met. My life is better, because I was blessed to know him. Watching the way he showed up in people's lives made me want to be a better human. Everywhere he went, he left things better than when he found them. His loving, selfless, integrity-filled legacy of championing those deemed least in our society will live on in the hearts and minds of those who walked alongside him. Now it is our responsibility to carry forward his life work of redemption and humanity. He fought tirelessly for criminal justice reform, standing as a steadfast advocate for those who were incarcerated and too often unheard. Jeff's strength, conviction, and unwavering belief in second chances touched all of our lives. He will be deeply missed. Jeff routinely visited us at the Maine State Prison to remind the least of Maine citizens that he recognized our humanity, which he demonstrated by doing so much to improve the quality of our lives. Most importantly, Jeff worked tirelessly to instill hope in all of us, a hope that, with a bit of concern and empathy, we could use to help others. The president of the NAACP at the Maine State Prison also shared with me that they will be naming an award in Jeff's honor, the Drum Major for Justice and Equity Award, recognizing him as a champion for change. Mr. Speaker, on that day in the chapel when Jeff's voice echoed through the halls of the prison, I also was honored to meet the steady presence who sustained him in both his work and his illness, his extraordinary wife, Carolyn, who is here today. Jeff didn't have a cell phone, so when I needed to reach him, I would call their home, and often would catch Carolyn on the other end of the line. She was always gracious, always warm, and always willing to chat for a few moments before handing the phone over to Jeff. It was unmistakable how deeply they cared for each other and supported each other. Jeff's work was extraordinary, but it was never solitary. Carolyn was his foundation. To Carolyn and to Jeff's entire family, I offer my deepest condolences and my profound gratitude for sharing him with us, all of the people of Maine, and especially with some of the most forgotten souls in our great state. I learned a lot from that man, and I will cherish everything he ever taught me. Jeff would almost certainly want me to highlight in this speech the Maine abolished parole 50 years ago, and we need to do what we can to bring justice back to the state of Maine. And also he'd want me to point out that not once has this state ever found an officer-involved shooting to be unjustified by the Attorney General's office. He would not want us to remember him only for his words. He would want us to continue the work. He would want us to examine our systems honestly, to confront injustice directly, and to legislate with extreme courage. We have a lot of work to do to carry on the legacy of this extraordinary man. Rest in power.
Chair recognizes the representative from Auburn, Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I was serving my first term in the legislature, we filled out our choices for committee, and I selected, I think, education and HHS, mom, nurse, those make sense to me. Nowhere on that list did I write judiciary, and yet I found myself on the judiciary committee, which I was immediately livid about, and then quickly learned that I loved serving on the judiciary. It was an incredible honor to serve with the folks that were on that committee, and I included, of course, Jeff Evangelos. We agreed on some issues. We disagreed wildly on other issues, and he demonstrated that that was okay. And I think the thing that he illustrated most clearly to me during our time serving on judiciary was voting based on principle rather than party. Of course, he was independent, but we know which way Jeff leaned. And I remember we had a vote on a budget. I don't recall the details, but I remember that myself, Jeff, and another representative, a Democrat, voted against the budget. And later, I joked with Jeff and said, it sounds a little bit like a joke. A Republican, a Democrat, and an independent walk out of the House chamber and vote no. And so we enjoyed that, but I'm really thankful to have had the opportunity to serve with Jeff and to see his example of voting on principle versus party. And I'm thankful for his example of that.
Chair recognizes the representative from Winter, Representative Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was sad to hear Jeff's passing. I enjoyed serving with him. We became friends here while we served together. He, the first connection we had was when he told me that he was a Kennedy Democrat, and that connection made a connection that I had with my grandmother, who was a Kennedy Democrat too. And Jeff held on to that. He held on to those beliefs and those principles, and it was because of his integrity, which led him to serve here as an independent. And we, at the time, sat close by each other and also had a lot of conversations. And we disagreed on a lot of stuff. He was mostly left, I was mostly right. But there was one category where we agreed a lot, and those were on justice and civil liberty issues. And one thing about Jeff is he always listened to me, no matter what the issue was. And there were a lot of times where he voted with me on stuff. And because he listened to me, I listened to him. And there were some times where I went his way on things, and he was a big help to me when we all came together and passed one of the most comprehensive civil asset forfeiture laws in the country that's in effect now. I never did quite come around on his opinions on parole, but because it came from Jeff, it really made me do a lot of inward thinking and looking at the subject, and I gave it a lot of consideration and still do because of Jeff. And sometimes that's what it takes, is one person who can connect like that. And I'm sad that he's gone. We had a good relationship here, and those are the type of relationships that can exist when people talk to each other and know each other on a personal level. So I'm sad that he's gone.
I just want to also offer my couple of thoughts on Representative Evangelos. I know his family's up in the gallery, and two things stand out to me. When I first served here, Representative Evangelos was often in the retired room, which is where a lot of us hang out when we're spending long days here, and he was always on the phone, working on behalf of his constituents to solve problems. While the rest of us were in there chatting with one another, doing maybe work on our laptops and so forth, Jeff was working the phones, figuring out how to solve problems for folks who were counting on him to be their voice, advocating with whether it be state agencies, the federal government, whomever, to solve some sort of problem. And that stands out to me pretty significantly. The second thing that stood out to me was when I was running for this post the first time around. We had our Democratic caucus to nominate our choice to be the next speaker. Jeff didn't have a vote in our caucus because he wasn't a Democrat, he was an independent. He wasn't present that day. But just before the vote, he sent out a mass email to the Democratic caucus that was perhaps not the tact I would have taken in terms of choices of language. And so I spent the day going around saying, I didn't ask Jeff to send that out to everyone, but it was his sentiment was that he supported me, he supported and had his reasons for that, but was so genuine, and it was so Jeff. And I think we all have, for those of us who've gotten to know him, have those moments where we can just say that was Jeffrey Evangelos to a T, and those moments will stick out amongst several others. And I just want to thank his family for sharing him with us, having the sacrifice that it takes to serve here in this body, and also the sacrifice that we heard of time to serve those at the Maine State Prison as well. He obviously went above and beyond his role just here in Augusta. So thank you for sharing him with us. We will all be saying a prayer and remembering him in the days, months, and years ahead. With that, I ask that we take a moment of silence. The chair is pleased to announce the presence in the gallery of Carolyn York, wife of Representative Jeff Evangelos. Representative Evangelos' daughter, Rachel Batty, son-in-law David Batty, and grandsons Austin and Garrett. They are accompanied by the Honorable Tom Hornet. Would they please rise and accept the